So we're going to bring to order the Economic Development Committee on, what's today's date, October 3rd at 7 p.m. We have 4 people here from EDC, so we now officially have quorum. Tonight's going to be a special meeting. It is not a typical meeting because we've opened this up to the public to have what we're calling a visioning event. So in the audience right now, there are 2 members from the CMRPC, which is the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission. I always have to check that one. They are associated with the state through helping towns like ourselves and many other across the state of Massachusetts to basically figure out if there are things we can do to move forward, progress different areas, even figure out what the problems are. This particular event right now is actually being funded by the state. We have actually in the past hired CMRPC as well as a few other groups, that not just them, to actually do these types of events. So just so everybody's aware, this is actually a state-funded event. We have also run one of these meetings already that was not an official meeting, but it was with CMRPC and a bunch of business owners in town, so contractors, developers, and some of the current business people. And that was to understand from a business owner's perspective kind of where they're at with how it is to do business in town, any roadblocks they've run into, any issues in process, and all those types of things. So that was a very productive meeting. This one is now with residents. So this was to actually talk with the community, ourselves included, because we're all residents here through EDC and people that have showed up. So tonight is kind of going to be structured a little bit, and we're doing that not to just make this a gigantic, like, hey, let's just get to the mic and start saying everything, because that has been done many times. The way that we're going to actually run this is basically with some major kind of big areas of discussions to frame up at least how our feedback is going to be. The big areas of discussions that we are going to talk about today are community needs, and we'll document some of these. I'll show you how it's going to work. Opportunities and constraints. Community vision and planning, and then we're going to kind of do at the end of this, we're going to kind of pull all of the stuff together to see if we can synthesize it, to see how we take some of these into action items and convert them into next steps. So one of the things that we did last time that, based on the size of the audience, I think I'm going to try pulling off again, is basically using the whiteboard, and you'll notice some smiley faces on the whiteboard. People in technology know this sometimes, because this is something that we do sometimes. But the notion is, as we say something that's really good and positive, you end up under the happy face. If it's just neutral and whatever, it's going to end up under here. If it's not a good thing, it's going to end up under here. Any action items, we're going to kind of document over here. And by the way, this is also to say if you see it up there, we understand if you want to voice that again, but try not to go on, just say +1 on that, and it's a way to collect these thoughts in a little more of a concise manner is what we're going to end up doing here, okay? With that being said, Dominique, I'm going to call you up because you're going to help me run this.
Wonderful. What would you like?
Feel free to sit closer to the mic.
Okay.
She's done me.
Is there an agenda?
Actually, yeah, do we have extras of these?
Yeah, we have some extras. This is sort of our cheat sheet for.
Yep. Not many people in the audience, so we will make sure you guys have.
There was one flop for you.
That's okay.
Oh, you were supposed to be sitting up there.
That's I put that there for you, Carol.
I'm not the boss, I heard.
I will ask this because we are not a big group. Would everybody be okay with quick introductions?
Sure.
Okay. Brad Maltz, Chairman of the Economic Development Committee. I'm going to go around this way.
I'm Luke McNeil. I'm on the Economic Development.
By the way, one thing to add in, I am a resident of Douglas since 2003. So it'd be interesting to see how long you've actually been in town.
I'm Luke McNeil. I'm on the EDC. I've been in town I've been a homeowner for a few years, and I grew up as a teenager here.
Bob and Eric on Cedar Street, been here since 1996.
Carol Gogolinsky on Island Road, and I've been here for a long, long time. And I ran a business here for a long, long time. So.
Long time it is.
I'm Brian Bergeron. I'm on Wallace Street, and I've been here since '03, I think, as well.
Okay.
So I'm Patty McNulty, Southeast Main Street, resident since 1998, business owner since 2014.
Dave Simmons, since 1998, Southeast Main Street.
Leslie Burrow on Depot Street, been here since '91, and my husband owns a business in town, and I've been on Building committee, school committee.
You've been part of the town.
He's been on concert, on planning board, so.
Perfect.
Chris Bennett here on behalf of the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission.
Awesome. So I'm going to try to keep this not formal, even though it's a formal videotape meeting, but we're a small group, so we should be able to have a good open conversation. I'm going to let you kind of kick it off, and I play whiteboard to her discussion and chime in when I need to.
Wonderful. So a little bit of background for those at home and some of you folks who may not be aware. So the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission is the designated planning entity for Central Massachusetts, which includes the city of Worcester and the 39 surrounding communities. We assist communities with a variety of planning and implementation projects, from homeland security and transportation to economic development and energy. I've worked with Douglas on several projects over the last couple of years with the agency. A number of my colleagues have worked here on different types of projects as well. So it's great to be back. Tonight, as Brad already articulated, the idea behind tonight's session is the town is working towards the development of an economic development strategic plan. And we've been doing this in phases with the town. And tonight's session is intended to understand what it is exactly that the residents want. We're interviewing different groups of stakeholders, but no
Or don't want.
Or don't want.
It's on both sides.
So, no plan can be successful, good, well done if it doesn't reflect the needs of what people actually want or don't want. So we're looking for your feedback in terms of what you want to see in Douglas. What's missing, what's great about it, what could be enhanced, and so maybe we can kick it off. So our thought tonight is to start by identifying what's missing in Douglas, community needs, what is not here. So we'll put this to the group. What key resources do you think are missing at this time?
And we're including the EDC, so we're all now townies.
Grocery
We're
store.
all
Missing a
working
grocery
together.
store.
Yeah.
Missing a grocery store. Everybody agree? Grocery store's a problem?
Yes.
Drugstore.
Drugstore.
Okay, so I'll just put these in the middle here.
Arts institutions, things like Putnam would have, places to go see live music, poetry, culture stuff.
Jobs.
Missing jobs.
Employers.
Well, that's two different things. So missing employers in town to be able to drive jobs.
To create jobs.
Create jobs, right.
What else? Would you like to see? What do you have to leave town to get? What's
Everything.
Definitely more food options.
food options? Put this question out there. Do you like needing to leave the community? Some people like to have the place that they live just be that quiet little place that they live, and they don't mind going out of town for other stuff. How do you feel about that?
No, I liked when there was a drugstore
Yeah.
downtown and there was a grocery store downtown.
Right.
I miss that.
The accessibility of something local.
Yep.
What do you think different residents in different sort of economic stages and life stages are missing? Maybe we can take it
24-hour cigarettes.
24-hour cigarettes.
24-hour cigarettes? Okay.
All right. How about young families? What's missing for young families here?
I would think that even though we have the state forest, the state park there, it doesn't seem like the residents really can access it
Okay. Why is that?
because it's full at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So,
From out of staters and out of
Yeah.
towns.
yeah, so there's the state park that doesn't seem accessible to the local residents.
And that's mainly during high season.
Correct.
Right,
Correct.
right. Out of season, it seems fine.
A town beach would be wonderful.
Is there a place
We
for
used to
that?
have one of those, too, didn't we?
What's that?
We used to have one of those, didn't we?
We did.
Schuster's.
We
Town
did.
Beach is almost also tied back to the state park. You can tie that problem together probably,
Right.
Interesting.
which is all state-owned at this point, so
Yeah, so it's
it's out of our control.
specifically Walnut Lake, I think, is what we're talking
That's
about.
the point, is a Walnut Lake here,
Sorry.
yeah.
Baldwin Lake.
To be specific.
I'll put that in there, you're right.
So just any state park.
So there's the town beach and these recreational opportunities, although they're in proximity, they're not accessible. Do you think that that's something that would be highly valued and appreciated by at least you folks? I mean,
Yes.
is this
I'd
something
like it.
If there
frequent?
was a resident policy versus a non-resident policy, I think that would reduce the yelling.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody have any?
Fun
Yeah?
topic.
Oh, yeah, that would totally take care of that. It's a nice place.
Does anybody have any nice strategies for implementing something like that?
So the environmental police control that, is that correct?
They are asked to.
Or DCR?
It's more DCR.
It's DCR, okay, so it's DCR that controls it. It happens to be in our town limits, as well as the other half of the lake is in Rhode Island.
It is.
So that would require some,
So I do wonder if maybe a quick answer to that would be, I think there is a financial control mechanism that might not be utilized properly right now.
Okay.
Right now, it's basically cheap for anybody to access it.
correct.
Is there an out-of-state, in-state mechanism, which has been discussed, by the way, a million times?
Right,
We always
but-
say it's out of our control.
Right,
Understood,
exactly.
but she's just,
Right.
it's just,
Yeah.
I need.
No, I'm just saying, that's
information.
why it doesn't go anywhere, because
Okay.
we-
Yep.
Right,
the state controls.
The other thing is Wallen Lake's a drain on our resources. If there is a disturbance at that facility,
Yes.
it takes our public safety.
you won't see the
vote.
state police coming in first. Our town Douglas
to go first.
police will respond to any incident.
Right.
It is draining our resources, and we don't get reimbursed for that.
Correct, and that's the sole
You know,
reason.
whether it's a drowning, a person in trouble, or a fight, or
Right.
whatever.
That's,
Traffic jam.
and that's the reason we have a dive unit.
Yes.
That's the whole reason, is that the town of Douglas.
And I
believe it or
know
not,
this has
a
come
dive
up
rescue
before as
unit.
far as the fee structure. The state needs to raise the fees on there.
Maybe we should get the state to make a separate parking area just for Douglas residents, considering the fact that they took about 250 acres of industrial zoned land, added it to the state forest. We were getting $50,000 a year for taxes on that land. Now it belongs to the state forest, and the state forest is giving us $25,000 a year less than they were before they took the land. So we're down by $75,000, and we can't even get to use Wallen Lake.
Right, so other communities use like town resident stickers in order to kind of differentiate, but I mean, the residents.
Still not a control of the outside traffic coming in, you still have to be
Agreed.
a part of that traffic, so there's a
Agreed.
few mechanisms that would have to be brought into.
Agreed.
Mimic what Webster's doing at Second Island.
Yep.
They have resident stickers.
Yep.
And if you're non-resident, you pay through the nose. If you're out of state, you pay even
The
more.
difference is Webster owns that lake, we don't own.
I realize that.
So I think
We
that's the
need to
difference.
force the state to do what's right.
Okay, so I think we're good on the state park, Wallen, we got that one.
Yeah.
We're gonna get going now.
Just as far as what would be nice to answer that question, the whole state park, state forest, that I think spins out into a number of other conversations, but just to answer your questions, the recreation is my answer.
Okay, are there other, do you utilize are there other areas that are well utilized for active and passive recreation, or is that about it?
For young families, you're back on, you
For
still on
anybody,
that, or
for
anybody?
anybody.
Well, there's also, we have the playground up at Martin Road, but funds have been so low
That's a
that
good,
playground.
yeah.
that really, like, we raised the money, we put it in, that's really fallen kind of into disrepair, and there's not as much up there as the grand scheme had been. So I think sometimes people, especially if it's, you know, just one person with kids, aren't as likely to go up there because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Can I ask what you mean by it's fallen into disrepair? Because I was just up there the other day and I thought it was kind of nice.
Well, I haven't been there for a couple of years, but I know, like, we had put in a brick walkway, that was all grown over. There
Used to be the
were,
pirate ship,
which I complained about because that was not approved. Somebody just let somebody put it
Oh,
up
did
there,
they?
and it was
Didn't
a
know
hazard.
that.
It had a slide coming right onto a stone. It was,
Okay.
it was a liability waiting to happen.
Yep.
You know, things have been broken. There didn't used to be trash receptacles up there, so there was just a lot of. It wasn't what it was when it opened.
yeah.
I think too that it's so secluded that a lot of mothers are reluctant to go up there by themselves with a couple of kids.
Safety
Well, that's what I was
concern.
saying. It, you know, enough people aren't using it
Right,
to make it the draw that it should be.
right. If they
I've been
wanna-
up there a few times this week and it's been packed.
Well, that's good to hear. I haven't been up, I haven't been up in.
They
it's been
they
years
do
since I've-
games there, I
Well,
think.
I was gonna say,
Soccer
a lot of
games
the
and
Little
stuff.
League type of stuff is done at those two fields in the back there.
Right, when that's going on, but during the daytime.
It's not,
Right.
nobody's up
That's-
there.
yeah.
I walk there with my daughter, so I live right down the road pretty much, and yeah, it's pretty dead when, I can easily walk there and she'll be the only one playing on the playground.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
about
Would
the-
you be comfortable if it was just your wife walking there with their daughter?
that's a good question. I know she's done it.
In Douglas,
Knowing my wife, yes.
I would, yeah.
But in general, yeah, actually in Douglas, I don't know if I'd actually have a problem with that, honestly.
It's still not the same as you want other people, you want.
You're
you
right.
know, the interaction and the.
100% agree, yeah.
Now, how about aging populations? What do you think's missing for, elderly residents or older residents in town?
Transportation.
Transportation, public transportation?
So, yeah,
Do
just,
you mean specific elder transportation, or
Yes.
you mean general public transportation?
Either one.
yeah, both.
Either
Okay.
one.
Good.
There used to be the Worcester Regional Transit Authority that would take seniors to their doctor's visits if you made reservations in advance, and that has disappeared. So they have to basically fend for themselves to get to their doctor's appointments.
Are there Uber drivers in Douglas?
I think there's one or two.
There's a few more local towns, I think, than actually in Douglas. I've seen I think Uxbridge or Whitensville or something.
What else is missing for people,
The pharmacy.
The pharmacy,
Drugstore,
Yeah,
they would probably
they have to
follow
go to other
elder
towns to get their
residents.
prescriptions filled.
It's a big one.
Our senior center is kind of vibrant.
It is,
It
great.
is. It's pretty active.
I know, I would like to see when we put the track in up at the school, and I know there's an issue if it's school hours, but I'd like to see, that's a safe place to go walk, especially for our seniors.
The track at the
Where
high
they-
school?
It's actually at the elementary
At the
school.
elementary.
I'd like to see a way to have I know there's an issue because if kids are up there, but whether it's Cory checks, whether it's badges or there's an hour or something that a senior walking club could happen up there. And I would rather have the interaction with the kids and the
The elders,
seniors.
yeah.
And there's gotta be a way to ensure the safety, people are out there, but something, you have a badge on, so you've been checked and these are the hours, and so it's not like, oh, who's this person
So
out
the
there?
senior walking club currently takes place in this building, in the gymnasium,
Whoa.
on Tuesdays and Thursday mornings.
Okay, interesting.
If there's an election going on.
Unless there's an election going on or an out-of-town basketball game.
Yeah, and if it's hot though,
And
it's
if it-
gross.
There's
You're
hot,
right.
yeah, there's a lot of
You're right,
things.
yeah.
Okay.
How about early career employees? Young single people, or not?
Cable and internet options.
Cable and internet options, really?
That would be
Well, we don't
nice.
have options, so yeah.
Okay.
It's pretty much one and done.
Do you have, I'm not that tech savvy, do you have broadband here?
Yes, charter.
We do, but we only have one supply.
One supply, okay. What else for the early career professionals?
Something to do.
Something to
A
do?
place to go, bars, what else is a
Brew pub. We
brew
need a brew
pub, bowling alley, doesn't matter.
pub. Brew pub.
Paintball,
Grill on Main is the only place to go right now.
yeah.
Those are pretty much the thing they do.
Interesting.
Which is nice.
But when you say brew pub, do you mean a brewery?
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
not just a pub, like a place that
Yeah.
actually
Like
brews
an
the beer.
actually, yeah, with
I mean, a
like craft
brewery in general, I
brews.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
What's
they
like
have been
everybody-
doing quite well
They've been doing
Right.
it
in
so much.
Massachusetts, yeah.
Yeah, and the microbrews and all those type of, even the one over Purgatory.
Yeah.
Who
It's
they-
in a garage,
It's
and
in a
it's
garage,
doing
it's a
great.
small spot, but they still do good business. It's just about giving options to people.
Seems like a lot of them, because there's a lot of roadblocks to doing that. Like I know that place in Charlton moved from Munson, the Treehouse.
Treehouse, yeah.
They're like,
Well, they're going, forget that crazy, yeah.
They-
People
right,
drive
they
like
moved
an
to
hour
Charlton
just to go.
because that Munson was giving them a hard time about doing their business. So if the
Yep.
town's more open to anything, it seems like it's not a
Charlton's
bad.
a town, we can have a session about laughing at them later.
Yeah. So there's Rapscallion in Sturbridge, which is in the middle of nowhere, and it's packed.
So I think, brew pub, got it.
I would like some kind of a cafe. I work from home, so I'd like some place I could go, take my laptop, and do some work for a couple of hours that was comfortable and clean and had power and internet.
So like a bean, but like a lot bigger, obviously.
And open more often.
And open better hours.
Better hours,
for
yeah,
work.
and with parking.
Is there a demand for co-working space here? Would you be interested in working in a shared office environment?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes?
You mean like a Regis or something like that?
I'm not sure what, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the three big ones, but yeah, we work in Regis.
With like conference space and basically like hotel
maker
space.
A maker space or an office space?
Both.
But
Both.
that
A
makes it
makerspace is a great
$3,
idea.
but, yeah.
I'm all for a
Somewhere that you have a
makerspace.
lot of probably single business owners, or maybe 2 or 3 that are running it out of their house. They might want to have a place that's a little more formal that they can go run meetings or do some other things. So.
Can you raise your hands again for me? How many people here are in business for themselves?
My husband.
I got
Okay, but you work from home too?
both.
Okay,
Both.
great. So we've got a lot of business owners. That's our
We have people
demographic
doing this,
tonight.
yeah.
Day
Great.
job, night job, yeah.
So what's the business community missing? What do you
Oh,
need?
boy.
Food options.
All right, so yeah, so conference space, networking,
Quick
Ask-
permitting.
all right, that.
Permitting.
Quick permitting.
Quick permitting, yeah. It'll take forever. You don't need the Chinese water torture to get these permits.
Well, I think there's 2 different discussions on business, right? There's
Yeah.
probably more of a, like running more of like a computer consulting thing versus trying to build a store and doing more of the land ownership business side of the thing. So you're right on that discussion. That's more permitting internally.
Now, you had said networking. How did in your experience, how did the businesses interact in town? Is there a downtown business association? Is that something, would more networking, collaboration, shared marketing opportunities, would those be things that would assist you in the sort of working more closely with the other businesses?
I think
Would people
it's
show up?
Use the chamber.
It's such a small town, I would think there might be tons of businesses out of people's homes that nobody even knows about. You know, they would have to either like poll the town or find out from, you know, maybe they're not even registered, you
All
know?
the businesses are in the annual report if they're licensed.
Oh. If they're licensed, but there probably are a lot of things that aren't quite official.
Oh, yeah.
guess, I don't know.
about that, but.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But that's a good call.
It's funny because the town offices have access to our names, businesses, and addresses to contact us, but we don't have any way to contact one another. Like, we don't have access to the same lists they're pinging us
Central
on.
business registry type of thing.
Yeah.
And online, like we have the residential listing, but a business.
Right,
Okay, that's an interesting one.
Right, because it's no longer a phone book.
right.
Right.
So there's no way to get in touch with one another. Although we get things asking us for money.
But you would like to be it would be useful
It
to
would
be
be
more in
nice
touch
to-
with each other.
We'd
Yes.
much rather always use a local business than go out of town.
Right,
Right.
if we have the option to go Douglas, we do.
Okay.
Okay.
But if we don't know, then,
That's a good call out.
How about employers? What do you think employers are missing here?
Well, we did have a comment about employers to create jobs. I know Carol brought that up.
No, but to your question about young people and people getting into business, there's not a lot of like, not a lot of like, I'll say businesses that are hiring large quantities of people, right? You literally have to go work retail in a different town somewhere. Go to Walmart, go to Northbridge, go to Sutton. Like for anything else in town, you need a resource to leave town. And jobs are one of those things as well. Most of the businesses in town are pretty small, not employing lots of people. So there's not a lot of opportunity for young people to get engaged and do it. So we need, you know, I always envision somewhere around 16, like a biotech park, or some sort of office space where we can have businesses that actually need young people to do.
Not gigantic business, but just where
Like
they can put a few of them in a building. and-
Exactly.
Incubators.
Then you need, just I would say low level, but entry level people to come in and fill those jobs, and that's where they get experience.
Great. So looking back at our list, so I'm hearing, we've discussed a lot of things. So we've discussed, wow, that's a long list.
I'm still writing them up here.
Yeah. All right, so things that you would like to, that at least some, if not all of you, would like to see in Douglas: a grocery store, a drugstore, art institutions, poetry opportunities, cultural opportunities, music venues, places to go, places to visit, brew pubs, bars, anything, nightlife,
What would you
day
want?
life.
What would anybody want?
Food options, good dining places, a 24-hour place to be able to go and pick up something quick.
We don't need more pizza places. We can make sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
no more
no,
pizza
no
places?
pizza places.
Okay.
No more.
We're good on pizza.
We
Okay.
need a town quota.
I think we should have a building at 12,000 people and more pizza places.
either more or better passive and active recreation opportunities.
For town residents.
What do you
More
mean?
town residents?
For
For town residents, for
To
town, we'll
enjoy
underscore
our
that.
own recreational facilities.
For town residents, got it. Let's see, what else? You need a pharmacy. Your senior center's vibrant, that's great news, but they need some better opportunities to,
Transportation.
transportation. And business supports, co-working spaces, maker spaces, places to do business, and opportunities to better connect with other business owners to not only do business locally, but potentially, maybe collaborate and
I call it
offer
like
each
a
other.
business registry, is how I documented it.
Nice,
But yeah.
nice.
Can I ask a question then? So we have a whole bunch of things we just listed out, even for a small group like us. If I was to go around the room quickly, what's the top thing that you think could make the most realistic impact?
Grocery store.
Grocery store.
Yeah, I'll put grocery.
Grocery. Putting people on the spot here.
Well, I'm just thinking, we have those things on either end of the town, on either end of town, on both sides. Route 16, we got one on one side, we got one on the other side. For me, that's not such a big deal.
Okay, perfect.
As far as I thought that the kind of the brainstorming thing of the meeting was how could those things then offset all of the how can they generate revenue?
We're gonna be getting there.
Okay. So I
We'll
was
work
really
through it.
thinking
Yeah.
in terms of what do I need, because I don't really need so much because I'm living without it, but I'm sure other
Fair
people
enough.
do, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think that wraps up my questions, unless anybody else has something that they'd like to add in terms of sort of a basis for what you'd like to see here. Anybody have anything else, or do you think?
I'd like to see more stuff open later at night.
More stuff open later at night, great.
I'd definitely like to see some type of a business park or something, I know that right over the line in Uxbridge, they're putting in a huge thing. It's gonna be employing like 400
I saw
people.
that, yeah, they're doing it down
Where's that
16.
Just before you get to Route 146 on 16.
You know where the
on
transmission
right-hand
place is? They're
side.
going to wrap around it. They're going.
Oh, that's all that construction over there?
Oh, yeah, it's gonna
Okay.
be huge.
So I want to bring one thing back to kind of the point you made, by the way, which is a great point that I don't think we addressed properly, which is the goal of a lot of this is because we know Douglas needs to bring in more of a tax base, right? So I think we're trying to almost solve two things here, which is through understanding the needs of the town, if we can satisfy that and build some of the tax base up through that, then I think that's kind of the combination attack point that we have to look at here. If we're just going to go try to bring something to the town, use up a piece of industrial land, not satisfy what the town's actually looking for, bring in just money at that point, but you might have had a better option that could have done both of those. Let's at least understand that, and I think that's part of the discussion we're trying to have. So,
Yeah, 'cause from what I understand, like you mentioned the pharmacy, I had heard that they had talked to different pharmacies, but we didn't have the number of people to.
that was a few years ago, actually more than a few years ago, and it's actually very slowly grown, not that fast, right? Where the magic number is 10,000 people. I forgot what census was last. It was the upper 8,000. 8,200. Okay, there you go. It's above 8,000. We're not quite at the magic number of 10,000, but what we are at is traffic on Route 16 is actually really high. We have a very good traffic count, maybe not as quite the census count. So depending on who you work with, you actually might be able to pull something in, and that's part of the discussion that we have to have.
So, Brad, I want to run this by you. There are two. The next section is it's looking at opportunities and constraints. So some of these things that you've talked about,
That's a good one.
where could we put them? Exactly. So let me grab a map.
There are
and-
3 maps around the room, but I'll bring one up.
Great.
So keep it on camera.
Need a marker.
If you can't see it, obviously there's another one over there that's easy to see.
So we just got to a lot of things.
The
that are-
colors are what matters, just so you know.
So we just got to a lot of things that are missing in the community, but before we start into figuring out where those things can go, I'd like to ask, what do you think the best features of this community are?
It's quiet.
Quiet.
Natural resources. a 2-acre minimum if you want to build.
See, I don't think that's an advantage,
So,
unless you want to keep a cow. You know,
yeah,
what do you need 2
or,
acres
or you
for?
don't want to be on top of your neighbors.
So the
Well,
low
they-
density is part of what you like.
And my thing is, you know, you need affordable housing. You know, our young people can't afford to live here.
So you have a lack of affordable housing in Douglas.
You know, I hate to see my grandchildren and have to leave and go somewhere else to live.
Yeah, the median house price crept up, right? It's like 275, 280, something
I
like
think
that.
it's a little more than that even.
Yeah, because it was around there during the
Oh, it's gone,
debates last
it's
year.
gone up quite a bit more than that.
So let's try to just jump into this mapping exercise. So I'm trying to understand where your key assets are right now. So so in terms of, let's say, undeveloped parcels where something could go, where would you be able to put something? What are some prime areas?
Well, I think most people would think about North Street and Gilboa, the corner there, which we all drive by
Yep.
pretty much daily. Is the
Yep.
number one spot I think of.
I'm
That's
not
not
sure
where
I
you
can
are.
map it.
Sorry,
This is usually- we usually
I'll take
kinda
care
do
of
this
that.
around
I got
the
it.
table. Okay.
There's been a
So-
sign that says a business park was coming for like
Since
15 years now.
2005.
That sign's gone now, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
You want me to circle it?
Yeah.
Okay, so just so people are aware, that is basically up here, the red spot this is Gilboa Street right here, right, so Pines over
So that
here.
runs right along the whole street.
Gilboa is there. It's actually zone commercial, even though there are residentials on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it abuts the first house.
Yeah, so it's this corner here, which is Gilboa and North Street is
Yep.
right here.
Yeah.
So this is pretty much the property,
That would be
it
awesome.
is that one property.
That one property.
Is probably, my opinion, the number one thing that should be solved ASAP.
Okay, how big is the developable area?
It's a weird property, it kind of wraps around a house.
Okay.
If you assume the house stays, it's basically 12 acres, but it's like a few acres on one side and then a few acres on the other. It's split basically as a property.
Is the house occupied?
I'm
Yes.
assuming so.
But it would theoretically have access from Gilboa and North Street?
That's correct.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's, yeah,
No, it's a great property.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's owned by Dan, who most people here would know Dan.
I think originally it's been discussed, they were looking at for a pharmacy.
Dan who?
And wanted to
Heaney.
put
Who?
over 55 housing up
Heaney,
towards the back.
Heaney.
Right.
But we had no zoning bylaw for 55 plus,
Oh.
so. And that would have been perfect because not a drain on the schools.
Right.
Affordable for people that wanted to stay in town and
Well,
And we just had that same conversation, Carol, and a few others recently.
and great access to 147.
The other thing that you need to do with over 55 housing is you've got to get rid of this idea of low density. I mean, it's, you know, half acre or even 10,000 square feet is not necessary for over 55 housing.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I really wish that people would go down to Plymouth. There's a place called Pine Hills, and it's unbelievable what they have done down there with their properties. They bring in $6 million a year, I think, in taxes into the town of Plymouth.
Well, you can make it a little more high density with the trade-off of some open space on the grand parcel, so everybody doesn't have the 2 acres on the individual pieces, but then you have.
Right.
But
But
doesn't-
I mean, the end of the day,
Pine
it's a
Hills-
zoning
what,
discussion, obviously,
Doesn't
that
Pine
we're
Hills
gonna
abut a
do.
golf course?
They have golf courses. They have about 5,000 acres.
So
But in the
that kind-
areas where
It's a
they're
different
going with it, the
Yeah.
density is really high. And when you get people that are over 55, or which I guess isn't so old anymore, but
No.
you know, they don't want to have to go out there and mow the grass or anything else.
Right.
That makes
You
total
know,
sense.
they prefer a clubhouse over a lawn to mow.
This would still be half-acre lots in that area, wouldn't it?
Right, and half acre is just it's way too big.
But to your
It's not
point, though, I
needed.
mean, don't,
Right, but I mean-
sometimes.
But that
we
is the
don't-
right size, yeah.
Yeah, so it's you said half acre?
Half acre.
Half
Is that the smallest the town will go? 'Cause I know
Well, as
some-
of right now, based on the current laws and bylaws, that is.
A
the
single
size.
plot's 2 acre as a development could be half acre.
The close, where you're north
Depends on
towards
what
town,
zone.
there's a certain district area that actually is different on square footage.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I mean, we're the town, we can zone whatever we want.
And that's part of this discovery process is if things have to change even from a town perspective, then we want to make sure we're capturing that and discussing that, so.
The
Right.
other thing about 55 and over or older.
65 and over, whatever.
65 and over residential is that they're not going to need the same amount of town the largest town service, which is schools.
Right.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah.
But then doesn't that beg the question, some of the other resources we're talking about, a pharmacy or some of the other things,
absolutely.
now become almost as interesting for that community to bring in. So.
I have
Even
a,
if they were like in it, got the bottom for the farmers.
You're 100% right, 100%. Put it right on the corner and then wrap the things around
So
it.
there's one of
Yeah.
our constraints would be zoning bylaws.
Yes, definitely.
no,
Yeah, because what you're talking about is the type of building that we had before anybody came up with the wild idea of zoning.
Yeah, you're right.
You know, this is, and these, you know, communities were built and neighborhoods were formed and everything else, and then
You own the
some
business, you
smart
build it.
people decided
Right.
they knew better.
But like some mixed-use buildings, is that like an option to have commercial
100%.
space on the
Other-
first floor and then condos on the second and third floors?
Yeah, it's viable. Whether it'll pass through and whether we can get, that's a different conversation, but it's a viable
You know,
option.
but I mean, you see that everywhere, like
100%.
outside Douglas.
Yeah.
you think there's a demand for mixed-use living, living in an environment above shops and above things?
Even
that-
like
that Whitby
Gregory's
has
is kind
that?
of set up, sort of, even though nobody's up there, that's kind of almost set up like
Right.
that.
That's what downtown Uxbridge is, all those old buildings.
That is exactly,
People live
Whitensville,
right
Church
there.
Street.
All
or-
business on the first
Outside
floor and
Douglas, yep.
residences above it.
Is that something we should add to our missing list that you'd like to see?
Mixed use.
Mixed use,
Mixed
definitely.
use, that, yeah.
I have a question for you guys that before we jump back into the mapping exercise. So all these out-of-town folks who are visiting the state park, they're day trippers?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think they travel from far away or just
Yes.
locally?
No, they're
Uh,
one state away. They're typically one state away.
Worcester,
and
Pawtucket, Providence, Woonsocket, there's different
It's-
cities they'll come from.
Yes.
Within 30 miles.
Within, yeah, you're right, within the
Probably.
30
We call it
mile
the tri-state
radius.
area.
The
so it's
tri-state
around.
area. Do you have any overnight dwelling, lodging
No.
opportunities
No.
here?
We have campgrounds.
You
over
can't-
You
across
camp,
Yes.
you
town.
camp,
Yeah.
and that's
That's
where
right.
the people would stay.
No,
No.
because most of those
They
are
do.
No, they'll go
not, like-
home.
No, most of those are long-term.
Right.
People
Yeah.
rent for the whole
Okay.
season.
No lodging.
And basically, I mean, if you look at really Blackstone Valley, there's not really good hotel options, not really strong ones.
That
So
is-
No, there's
Do you think-
Quaker Inn in Uxbridge.
There's the 8 up on 16 in Sutton.
Yep.
Do you think there might be a market to, if you could
Not
turn it
in
into?
this industry. The only reason you would have hotel space is if there was a reason why people needed to, like, honestly.
Unless
the
it's right
places
off
we have-
146. Like if it's
Or
right
it's a
on.
The places we have aren't
Unless it's-
filled to capacity.
Right, that's, because what I had been thinking was along the terms of the fact that there's this huge, what could be a draw, but right now it's a.
The state forest.
The state forest could be a draw, but now it's a problem instead of being an asset.
Mhm.
Yeah. Funny enough, a few years ago, we actually had this conversation, even at EDC, was can we brand the town as like kind of an outdoor friendly type of a place that you highlight Breezy Acres and you highlight the state forest and some of the other things.
Get an REI.
Do it on, yeah,
Go
exactly.
hiking.
Now, this,
Okay.
when you talk about
Give us
the
some
commercial on the other side of the town, there's this small spot, I didn't
It
realize.
is locked in, yeah.
It's right on 16. What
It's
do
on
you-
16,
I think
right?
it belongs to the state now, too.
I was gonna say, oh, this red one? I
Yeah.
don't know where that happened to that one.
I think that's state also.
But maybe this map needs to get updated, because when I looked at the map, the assessor map online,
Yeah.
it looks like this is all state. I don't see any of this commercial. It looks
That's
like-
actually what Carol's saying. She thinks that they
Right.
took this commercial spot too, so we'll have to.
I'm not,
verify that.
I'm saying this right here,
No, I think
according to the
raised-
maps, is
Raised.
industrial.
Yeah, it is industrial, okay?
Is
But-
it still industrial? Because it looks on
But
the.
I think this is all belongs to the state now,
That's right.
and I think most of this frontage belongs to the state. The only way in is through here. Unfortunately, there's a lot of wetlands in through there. It's not really a very viable piece of property. It's difficult to get to. There's a lot of wetlands in it, and it's all owned by pretty much one person who has no interest in developing it, and I'm
Right.
willing to bet you, when he goes, it's going to the state forest.
Wow. So what, is this area in orange across the street, across the street, yeah, the kind of.
Oh, down here, the
yeah.
industrial thing?
Was that where the wind farm was gonna go?
That's
Like-
correct.
Yes.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, just curious.
And what happened to that?
State enjoying.
What happened to, I can tell you what happened to that. They came and they wanted to put up windmills, okay? Well, we jocked them around for about 2 years, bring in this, bring in that, bring in this. Well, by the time they finally got their permits, they couldn't sell the electricity because Hydro Canada came in and said, we can sell electricity cheaper. So because they couldn't sell the electricity, they couldn't get the money to build the windmills. Now, if those windmills had gone up, if we'd been more speedy in getting those windmills up, the windmills would have been up, and then all the land underneath it would have been available for development. So it's just another situation where
Too slow.
they're
Dragging
too
our feet.
slow in this town. We take forever to do anything. We have a community development department that has not been proactive whatsoever. It's been put the brakes on all the way for years.
So this is all now green.
You got it. And that was a nice dry area through there, and we actually had Carter Burgess did a layout of us with a proposed subdivision and everything on what could have been done there. And so it was a good piece of property, and everybody carried on, well, there's no water and there's no sewer. Well, you know what? A lot of buildings don't need water and sewer. I own some industrial buildings. I own a number of them. And I use more water in one 2-bedroom duplex in a year, in 6 months, than I use in 4 industrial buildings in a year combined. Because people, when they go, they're not going to do their laundry, they're not going to take a shower, they're not using water, and these big water users like the mills are all gone.
Right.
We're good, Carol.
Okay.
I'm pulling her off. I'm going to move over to this one,
Yeah.
which I think where you're going to go next?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Bob's
if we
got
look at
something
number
here.
3 on the map. Oh, one more.
I just want to make a comment on hotels. I think hotels are pretty much dead in Douglas. You can't even get a hotel built in Dudley for Nichols College, which you would think there would be a hotel next to
Right.
Nichols College,
For
and there's
visitors.
not.
Yeah.
So you won't get a
I don't think it's
hotel.
high on the list. We'd have to have a
No.
lot more things to actually draw a hotel in at some point.
You just won't in this area. So hotels, I think you can cross off the list entirely.
Yep.
Unless there was another.
Draw for it.
Or unless
Like a
it was
hospital.
a destination one, like a Great Wolf Lodge.
A Great
or,
Wolf
you know,
Lodge type thing.
right.
That actually brings.
That's a very good idea, yeah. So let's go to number 3. If people aren't familiar with number 3, it's when you're heading down Route 16 towards Uxbridge. Pretty much down there, you know, there was the old roofing company. And then basically there's like the GBI sign for like 20 acres or whatever on the left. And before you head over, it's kind of that area around that. It's behind some buildings, and it's a bunch of acreage that actually the town has actually reclaimed.
Before West Street,
After.
Right after.
No, you're going the wrong way.
No.
headed to
yeah.
146
It'll
from
be before
town,
West.
Yeah.
after the high school.
It's going to be before West Street.
After
Yes,
before West Street.
It's before West Street. You got it.
Behind the church, the,
Not
what's,
Not
What
the
used to
church
be,
of the end time.
what used to be.
So it's not, no, Jehovah's Witnesses,
Jehovah's
yeah, so
Witnesses.
it's before, it's kind of actually behind it. If you
Yeah,
wanna look
behind
at
it, yeah.
It's sitting behind in the woods behind that.
Okay.
That's a large piece of the properties.
Does everybody know where it is?
You kind of know what we're
Constanza?
talking now, right? The
Yep.
Jehovah's
Just on
Witnesses.
16, right before you get into Oxbridge.
Basically,
Right.
which is, that's where the cutoff, the Jehovah's Witnesses is pretty much where you can see the road change over to Oxbridge.
Would you agree this has been highlighted as a priority development area, I believe? Do you think this is one of Douglas's best land assets?
No.
To build?
Why no? To build and get revenue.
Well, we got a yes and a no, so let's hear the yes and then the no.
Well, Douglas is a bedroom community. We all enjoy the fact that it's quiet. That's not a highly residential area. So putting a business out there, it can be a big business and it's not going to affect the sleepy residents of Douglas.
It can be an entire park, and it still won't impact the traffic in
Right.
town.
Plus it's right there.
And it's right at
close to
146.
so.
Okay, good yeses. What's the no?
Loads of wetland. There's the
Just
problem.
replace
Well, and the problem is too, that, we've got a new conservation commission, so things may have changed, but, you know, before, and I have a project myself that I worked on, I had to hire an environmental scientist. He went out and he said, no, this is not wetland, okay? And, well, the town had their environmental guy go out and he's going, you see this black leaf? See, that's got black on it, because it's been sitting in the water. This is a wetland. So we got him saying it's a wetland, one scientist saying it's a wetland, the other guy saying it isn't. My guy said to me, well, you can argue this and we can drag it through court and you'll win, but it's going to take you forever. So you might as well just forget it.
Let me ask a question to that, because this has come up either in the last session and
Right,
this one a
right.
little bit. So one quick question, is the wetlands a self-imposed town thing for how many wetlands that we actually do have to restrict, that we can actually go modify and or, you know, replicate? Is that basically the thing that's stopping us right now, is that it's a self-imposed, we shouldn't touch it because we don't want to touch it? Or
Well, I think that.
is there a state mandate for how much percentage of wetlands we are allowed to modify? Knowing that they've taken all the state forest, which by the way is probably a lot of wetlands,
Right, right.
so you can almost do a trade-off.
Well, the thing was, there wasn't as much wetlands on where they took.
Okay, so it's back here is what you're
Right,
saying.
yeah, back on the other side is, so
And
that's
maybe
right.
this
The
is not
side
a
that they
good
took was
conversation for
very,
now, but
very
in
good.
general, that's probably a topic that we have to figure out, which is,
And then
you
go-
say that there's wetlands that are.
Well, what I'm
blocking
saying is maybe they need to find an environmental scientist that's not looking at a black leaf.
Right.
So you think enforcement might be, if there's a gray area, you think enforcement goes on the heavier side rather than the lighter
Exactly,
side?
Doesn't this sound
exactly.
for sure?
Right, but what we need to do is get that answered, and
Right.
then if it's a viable development land, make it so. If it's not, take it off our list as an asset, and be done.
Is it worth having a joint meeting with the Conservation Commission to discuss like actually what the constraints
By
are?
the way, I think the town admin, he is actually working with
Okay,
conservation
'cause
right
the-
now on that specific area, just so you
Okay.
guys are aware, so.
Because there's
it's
a
active.
requirement to replace wetlands that you disrupt.
There could be
right?
replication of them, yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, the compensatory lands, I think they call it,
Correct.
but
That's on
that-
floodplain, compensatory storage. That you can't replicate some wetland, but you can only do up to 5,000 square feet, I think.
But is that a law that is per owner of that property, or could you, I never thought that you could approach it from the entire town? And to say,
Well,
look,
first of all, we own a
states-
bunch of property back there.
Well,
First of all, but it's accessing that property that we'd have to cross a few properties, different ones, to be able to access that property. I think the question right now is to access the good land back there. We had this conversation at the last separate discussion. The owners of those other properties, some of them are willing, by the way. I think Louis actually had spoke up. He
Right.
owns a piece of one of them. He's like, yeah, if we can make this work, let's go figure it out. And I don't think everybody else was approached. So I think to that point, it's almost an easement that might have to disrupt wetlands to be able to go access usable stuff in the back. And I think that isn't so much a town, but it's a conservation committee tied to the town who owns the back property and then whoever owns the front piece.
I want to bring up one thing, and I remember a number of years ago when they adopted a policy that you could not fill in more than 5,000, I think it was 5,000 square feet of wet, and you would have to replicate it. In fact, I think you have to replicate more than you do. More than 5,000 square feet on any piece of property, and any property that was in common ownership with it, all right? Now, when you look at that stuff up there, it's all in common ownership. So if you've got a piece of a property that has common ownership, and let's say it's 30 acres, and you can't get across it with the wetland without less than 5,000 square feet, which is 50 by 100, then you got problems. You're not going to develop it.
Exactly.
Is
And
that
these are-
state? That it's
No,
state
this
law?
is some, I don't know if it's state, I know that they decide to take it in as a policy. I remember going to a meeting and saying, please do not do this because this is gonna be a problem.
So so I want to kind of, I'm
So
going
I
to add
think we
one more
need to
point on
look
this and
to
we're going to
see
move
that,
past
right,
this, but I want to
okay.
let you guys know that, and this is even for people on camera, that during another discussion we had with town admin and a few other people, the discussion came up, which is, are our town bylaws for conservation, our wetlands and whatnot, are they stricter than the state?
I believe so.
Well, hold on, thank you.
Yeah.
Are they stricter than the state? And if they are stricter than the state, why? And do we as a town believe that we need to keep them that strict? Or do we want to go and see about modifying them, even to use the state as our minimum viable that we might want to go play with anyways? Because guess what? They're doing it through a lot of other communities, so why are we worse? So this isn't a kind of a feedback question, this is just want you guys to know where the conversation's going, which I thought was actually a good, positive discussion to figure out. Why are we harder to go do things in sometimes like those areas than the state? So, just want you guys to know that this could help this conversation depending on where that discussion goes. So.
Now, assuming that the town and developers were able to work through some of those constraints and identify strategies to do so, it sounds to me, I've heard suggestions that that's a great site for a large business. What do you envision there as the highest and best use of that property? A large industrial park, a large?
Probably, it's a little out of the way, you're not going to want to see, the pharmacy wouldn't work there, in my opinion.
No.
Grocery store is kind of out of the way for it.
For most people, it wouldn't be better than anything else.
A good commercial to industrial, but like a business, not a residential type of a frequent trip business.
Something with a good straight square footage.
Well, and, I mean, there's some basic business infrastructure things we don't have in town, such as a FedEx pickup facility, a
Right.
UPS pickup facility.
Those are good ones that are the
Those
list, by the
are,
way.
that could go in the business
Shipping
park.
facility, I'll
Yeah,
generalize it.
right, we don't have that support for businesses in town. I have to go to a different town for that.
Is there a different, do you generate more taxes with one type of business rather than another? And isn't it just based on their excise tax and their property tax? That's
Well,
what-
so this is a tricky question. There's an easy answer and there's a complex answer. The easy answer is technically, the easy answer is basically the square footage of the property and the valuation, all that is pretty fixed amongst any business in town, right? So there's pretty much a fixed rate on, this is how big the building is, this is the square footage, this is the value of the property, here's your tax rate. There are certain businesses, such as the growing facility up in the mill, that you also then could negotiate with them to come in and say that maybe there's part of a revenue sharing model, or maybe there's something else, depending on the type of business, that they're actually willing to invest back into the town, depending on what they're bringing to the town and what the town is offering back to them. So that is a added bonus on top of said tax base.
Right, and then marijuana retail sales, the town can tax at 3%.
And those are one-offs if you do the marijuana, the angle on this too. And that's for dispensaries, not for growing, there's a difference there.
That's why I said retail.
Yep.
The other thing as far as excise, if you get like a warehouse that, at one time, I think it was Home Depot was gonna put one over in Sutton. And they had negotiated with them, not only were they gonna build the building, but all of the trucks were gonna be registered in Sutton. And
Wow.
there's the
There you
money.
go. That is,
Right
that's
there.
the car excise and truck excise tax.
Because when you talked about things that you don't want, one of my concerns about whether or not, if they're too slow to move on something like a windmill, we're gonna end up being completely desperate and end up having to take something that we all don't want.
Yeah.
And I think I used to live in Upton, and I remember there was a big battle that they had with some medical waste dump that they wanted to put there. And, you know, if we don't put in something that we can tolerate, we're gonna end up with something that, out of desperation.
Gray area was the mega dump too.
Yeah. That is true, yes.
Oh, you're
Okay.
serious?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
joke.
No, at some point it was gonna be,
Yeah, it
but
was
way
gonna be
back when.
done.
Right.
Okay, you're
Now, I
about
don't,
letter?
now,
Yeah.
since,
Yeah.
I think moving
wasn't
forward,
sorry
it
enough
makes
to have
sense,
that.
rather than identifying the
I'm glad
priority
that did
parcels
that.
and
Me
going
too.
back and identifying their highest and best use, let's do it as we go along. So to backtrack, for this parcel up here, North and, is it Church?
North and Gilboa.
North and Gilboa. So you talked about a pharmacy and you talked about 55 plus housing. Do you think
Yep.
that's, those
That could
are?
be a grocery area, depending on the
Or-
size of the
or a
grocery
grocery
store that can
store?
go in there, right? That could be a lot of things.
I like
Depending on
the
how you
idea
actually fixed it
of
up.
55 housing over a pharmacy.
You would take 55 over a pharmacy, you said? I just
Oh,
didn't-
yeah.
No, put the 55 over the
Oh,
pharmacy.
physically
Like
over the
mixed
pharmacy,
use.
sorry, yeah, okay.
Okay. And
Fair
that,
enough.
and that it's easily accessible and has good.
That
it's-
corner is like the number one corner
That's the
for,
number one
I bet
corner?
you,
Okay.
almost all of us drive there almost daily past that.
I never.
It also puts 55 and over equidistant to our senior center
And
and
the
the Sutton
Sutton
one.
Center.
is right.
Nice.
You're right.
Nice.
Which is
That's a
right
very
on
good
North
point.
Street.
Yeah.
What?
Which goes back to the transportation, it'd be great.
That'd be huge.
I know that our ex-fire chief said that he has no problem with a building 60 feet in height. So if you,
So that gets you what, 5 stories?
five stories
roughly?
for senior housing, if they have elevators and stuff.
And it's a big property for that. I mean, by the way, you could probably literally put 2 of those types of buildings depending on how the property is utilized, because it is a very large property, just wraps around the house.
Okay.
So we've talked about bringing Dan in and having these conversations with Dan. He has some partners that own this with him, so.
That's the house that had a fire, and then they.
No, that's down the street from it though. That's like
But
3
it's
houses
still-
down.
But it's still part of the red, right?
They are all in the red.
Okay.
All those houses right there when you drive down to Lackey Dam, they're all in the red on the left.
Does anybody know the person who owns that house?
No.
No?
But we can figure that
Yeah,
out.
Look it up.
Yeah, that's easy.
All right, so we've got some ideas for that parcel. What are some other prime assets?
I will throw one more out there, which is a long-term asset, but we've all talked about it a lot, is behind Pine, right? Which is not a short-term, in the next 2 years we'll be able to use it. But the discussion is up in this gray area, number 2 basically, there's probably a more like a 10-year vision that we probably want to put in place for how maybe when he's done mining out that property and he's pretty much done with it, how do we turn that into something else? But there's a lot of people in town that might have had shorter-term hopes and dreams on that. I think it's probably a longer-term discussion.
Is
that
it
we
an
have to-
excavation site?
It's pine sand and, yeah,
Pine
it's a
sand.
sand and
Oh.
loam and stone
Okay.
and all that.
EYNE, right?
Yeah.
EYNE, yeah. And Jim Pine, we already spoke to Jim about
Right.
this, but just want to let you know that there is also, but he did bring this up, there is a property behind him, he mentioned, that was landlocked, that he said is actually zoned industrial, that might be something we want to look at in the nearer term. I don't know specifically which one it is. We'd have to go and look on a map with more borders on it.
I could tell you which one it is, but that's all right.
And so this pine, sand, and loam,
Just pine sand.
pine, sand.
Just pine sand, yep.
So in 10 years, that property will be usable? Why?
In the
why
10-year-ish
10 years?
timeframe, he will basically have probably
Oh,
excavated
he
the
will have
entire
excavated,
property,
okay.
most likely.
Got it.
Maybe, we'll see. But that's where,
Okay.
like, if we were to have a real conversation about it, I'd say it's probably out 10 years. It's not in the next 3 to 5.
Okay.
I could be wrong. It could be pulled in. It's up to Jim and how he wants to run the business. But Jim's very open. He was actually at our business discussion. So he's very open for those conversations.
Do you have any thoughts? Sorry.
No, just the red splotch in the middle, right in the middle of the, no, down toward the middle, down.
In the middle, left,
Yeah,
right
that. Here's that.
Your other middle.
That is, so this is, I think, this is the property from the pipeline? Is that the property from the pipeline? I think it's the one we just acquired that has a lot of restrictions on it. It has the town wells on it.
It doesn't look familiar to me.
Because Rydell is the one right next to the
Rydell.
fire department, right?
Okay, now
Yeah.
this is the town, the property the town just acquired.
That is us.
This
Oh, so
is-
this is different?
Yeah, this is where, right here is where the new Dunkin' Donuts is gonna go. This is the fire.
Oh, so that's the town dump and the fire
And then this is the
station
town
and
dump.
all of that stuff.
And this,
Yeah, there's some, there's
I mean, there's some plots of land.
there. That's where Heen's place is.
he needs to
That's
up
actually
here.
right.
The dance place.
Yeah.
That is a pretty decent
That'd be a
spot.
nice spot, that's more central.
That would be a great spot.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll pull the meeting back now.
All right, sorry, we haven't
No,
looked
that's
at the
okay.
red splotch.
This is good. So just so I think just for the camera's sake and the mics, the red that we are looking at is basically where the town dump is, the fire station is, Rydell.
DPW.
It's,
Yeah,
yep,
DPW.
exactly. And that's where there's a potential Dunkin' Donuts that is being discussed about going in across from Family Fuel, which they're working through zoning at this point, I think it is, or somebody.
Thank God, another Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, it would be just Family Fuel not having theirs and one moving across the street and building a full one there. Or a Dunkin', as I call it.
But that one has
That doesn't
donuts.
stop Northbridge, by the way, they still have the Dunkin'.
No, I know.
On 122.
It is.
That's a
Different
nice
section.
There'll be both. Dunkin' Donuts will be in both places.
He would have, he would keep his?
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
Is that what they're gonna
So is that are there untapped opportunities there? Do you think those they're prime
There's
development?
potential land there to use. I don't think they're gigantic properties, but there's probably potential land there.
So like we were just saying, like that'd be a great place for a grocery
stop
store,
at grocery
something more
store.
central. The challenge with putting anything like that on the edge of town is the competition shoots through the roof very quickly. If you go on any edge, there's.
This is directly in the middle of the town, basically.
Yeah. If we go on 16 either direction, there's way too much competition for a pharmacy or a supermarket.
What's interesting though, if you bring a supermarket in, you pretty much bring in a pharmacy inside of the supermarket.
Right.
So once you can kind of combine those two fairly
But I think
easily.
any-
Some of them have Dunkin's built in also, so there's different ways of pulling that together.
Like a Target always has that stuff too. My concern would be that any of the major supermarket chains are gonna look at our area and they're gonna say, you got a super Walmart, 8 minutes away.
Market Basket, Super Walmart.
Right.
You got Hannaford, you got Shaw's, you got Price Chopper, Market 32, Price
IGA.
Chopper.
So you're fighting for a percentage of already a small
Right.
mill community.
Well, as far as a grocery store, if you get into a specialty one, like,
Aldi's or Trader Joe's or
what's the one, not
Market
Trader
32.
Joe's, what's the one I'm thinking of?
Aldi's is the only other one.
Whole Foods?
Whole Foods. Whole
So
Foods has
the problem
two
with
type
Whole
of
Foods,
stores.
They do, they have a 360 and they have the regular Whole Foods. 360 is the
The smaller version.
smaller, lower end-ish ones with more of their brand than the actual more expensive.
And a
brand.
lot of the younger people would drive from Webster and Dudley in
Yeah,
Southbridge,
'cause
not
we don't have- We
Southbridge.
have to go to Bellingham, I think.
Exactly, for the first
Right.
one.
Providence or
Correct.
up to, yeah, all over.
Yeah, we're
Now there's the
25.
Spags.
Or
so they-
or
they're
Shrewsbury, or go to the old Spags.
Exactly.
Right.
But people would come to this one.
Do you think this is a good
We'd have to see how much is
Or you think it-
available.
okay.
No, yes, the central one.
Let's see how much is available land in that red commercial, but that could be,
Okay.
from a centralization perspective in town, I think that's a good spot, but I don't know what the available
Yeah.
land is in that spot.
Okay.
You can't build on the dump, so it
Right,
crosses.
so
Right.
dump is off, fire is off.
Before,
Even
on the other side of the street.
The only
right?
thing you put on the dump is solar panels.
Even that's gonna be a problem.
Why would that be a
Not from
problem?
what I heard.
Yeah.
Maybe they can-
Do we want to capture that as an action item to find out how much land is available?
When you say in the dump, are you talking about where they have the carnival sometimes?
Working with a consultant.
Is that?
Yes, that's where the Dunkin's going in front of it, basically.
Okay, so that's unbuildable because,
No, on the dump, she's saying that we can't put solar on the dump, but we couldn't, you're not gonna replace the dump with the building, I guess is the thing.
no, what I'm saying is that area just across the street from the,
Family fuel?
the family fuel that's, diagonal from the.
That's the Dunkin', that's where Dunkin's is gonna go.
Where the circus usually sets up.
Where the circus usually sits, where Dunkin' is
Oh, I thought
potentially
you
gonna go.
I thought you were saying that
Maybe
was a whole
circus.
landfill.
Every now and then a circus comes in
It's
town.
kind of wasted land.
How about the gravel pit behind, on the opposite side?
Percy G's old?
Yeah.
It's all solar.
What are they doing?
Did they do solar back there?
Yeah. that's a
Yeah,
huge
they
solar
converted
farm.
it to solar.
The problem with that is it's right on top of the town wells, but they got solar there, a lot of
Yes.
solar.
I got a big one.
Yeah, when you
We got-
fly
we got a
over, you
Google
can
map
really
to
see it.
about
You don't see that much driving by, but if you fly over, you can see it really good.
Now, just to keep us on track here, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, we told you all that this program would run until 8:30, so we're at 8:06 right now.
Got 25 minutes
They
left.
tell you I gotta leave in 5 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Fair enough.
So any other prime development opportunities? that
There
you
was
were-
one that, and I'm gonna, so, Bill, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, you can call me out on this, but I do remember Bill telling me somewhere back here, the orange is a mixed residential commercial that has some of the soccer fields, I think it was back there, or there's something back there, like behind the cemetery, or
The VFW.
there's something back there that's actually a big open area that actually could be used, because it's zoned both residential and commercial.
The old gravel pit.
Yeah.
Town-
Is that the old gravel?
Town gravel pit.
So there's something back there that Bill mentioned, this is a while ago, so he'd have to correct me, that might be an open lot that
That's
we
not
have back
Percy
there.
Place, that's not Percy GU.
No, that's not. Percy's further down over here.
It's
This is,
behind
Oh,
it,
right next to the
right?
cemetery.
It's where the senior center, you talked about relocating.
exactly. If you know the cul-de-sac, when you go down Southeast Main on the left, the first cul-de-sac, it's like behind
Yeah.
the cul-de-sac, basically.
And what do you think would be a nice potentially, what would be nicely
That
located?
again could be the same thing as the other
Same
one.
now.
That's
Same
local
thing.
again.
Yeah.
Okay. Central
You're
again.
central at that
As long
point.
as we can get street access off 16.
Okay.
Right.
And I think I'm gonna say this, and I don't know if everybody agrees with me, but I think one of our biggest problems in town is the lack of open, available land that's
Right.
easy to build on.
Exactly.
Yep.
That's literally one of our assets that we're missing to actually bring in more tax base. So
Right.
this is the type of stuff that we gotta see, can any of these be viable to bring something in?
Right, and the challenge would be, as soon as we talk about putting something large, like a supermarket in conjunction with a pharmacy or anything like that, in that central red spot, people are gonna throw their arms up and complain about traffic going down 16. And the NIMBY crowd's gonna come out and shut it down, because 16 is not, it's a
designed.
It's a state highway, but it's not, our section is not made for high throughput.
Yet.
Right.
But how do you make it available for high throughput?
But we have to always propose it and see what
Right.
we get with that, so.
Right.
Okay. Now, let's go to, if
good.
everybody agrees, let's, I have a couple questions. Where would you put the brew pub?
So, in the old grammar school.
Old grammar
Yeah.
school?
In the old grammar school, in a heartbeat.
That would be.
That would be badass. That would be awesome.
Yeah, in the old grammar school.
Where,
But,
Brew pub and winery though, because I don't like beer.
that's fine.
Very accommodating.
No, hold on.
You need yeast for both, so.
We only have a few minutes left.
Just that space, you think that would pass zoning being in the.
That close to a
right next
school.
Right next to the school.
So you are hitting on what I was
That's-
going to say,
that's
there
the
is an issue over there, it's
limitation. And
very
the
close to
post
kids
office.
and schools and stuff, so there's a discussion that has to be had.
Yeah.
how about
Brewery's
in,
not open during school hours.
Right.
And
You're
kids
gonna be
are allowed-
brewing during school hours, but maybe it's not for sale during school hours.
I know it would. It's an awesome building. Like, all the brew hub.
Okay, so we got that note. We're
Yeah.
good.
how about the co-working or maker space? Where would you put that?
The
I
second and
think
third
the old
floors of the
school
brew
would
pub.
be-
Upstairs.
Yes.
And then the library.
She's right.
You're putting that in the brew pub?
There you go.
Second and third floors of the brew pub.
The old school's not that big, by the way.
Yeah, I know, but you'd have to renovate the space.
It's really, it's not that big, like you.
It's really not big.
Yeah, I mean,
I've been
okay.
over there.
Have you seen Purgatory? It's like.
No,
bigger
fair
than
enough,
this
Purgatory is really small,
room.
but, yeah.
Okay, well, I've,
But it's
I've li-
cozy.
I've listed that as an option. Do you have any secondary thoughts on other
So we
alternative
talked about
locations?
solar a little bit, and obviously there's some privately owned solar farms, like Percy G, things like that. Can the town benefit in any way from deploying solar and taking advantage of anything like that?
There are many mechanisms to take advantage of solar.
So there is one site that we have discussed in the past, which is now the mobile site that we acquired, the gas pipeline site.
Well, I'm not even thinking that. I'm thinking like all the rooftops downtown, like go right down to businesses.
We actually designed the new elementary school, is constructed to be able to handle some as well.
Great.
It can handle it structurally, but from what I understand, the roof, you void the warranty on the roof. Because you have to penetrate for the supporting
All the rubber and
substructure.
roofing and all that.
Yeah.
And we also tried for wind up behind the high school, which they said it didn't generate enough.
Didn't
I
have
don't
enough
know how
wind.
it didn't, because it's ridiculously windy up there.
Well, they did test though.
But
Do you think, is there pretty strong support for solar in this town? People don't have too many?
Probably.
I don't think people would be opposed to it.
Solar
you
is
know
a
what?
very passive technology.
It's super passive.
Okay.
You know what?
You don't even know that it's there.
No,
where it is. If it's
no,
on
yes.
rooftops,
Exactly.
that's
I'd
one
like,
thing.
I'd like to bring something up. It's gonna depend where they put it.
Yeah.
all right?
That's what I think we're
I
saying,
do not
exactly.
wanna see good industrial land that can
course,
be,
yeah.
Well,
have
that's my
buildings
point.
put in solar.
I don't want to tie
think-
up a whole field with it
Maybe
if
what-
we can do it on rooftops.
Yeah, maybe, because you really do increase the value. If a person's got a piece of land and they're generating like, say, $30,000 a year of income from it, that piece of land is a lot more valuable
So-
because it's how much it's worth, so it can be done. But I say, why don't we let it go in residential areas? I mean, there's loads of woods all over the place. Cut down.
How about on
trees,
top
put
of
some
our
solar in.
mixed-use pharmacy, over 65 buildings that
Well,
we're
that
going
shows
to
You know
Be a
what?
requirement.
That stuff is
Yeah.
so small.
Any
It's
new business
minuscule.
going in should have solar on the
Have
roof.
a solar mandate.
That's
No.
actually,
No.
you'll never get business in, period.
Right.
Now, putting a mandate like that
Right.
basically,
Oh no, I hate upsetting my electrical costs.
Oh, yeah, why would, I wouldn't want.
I know, but
for
anytime
electricity.
somebody's told you have to.
do anything.
Yeah.
You're gonna say.
The ideal place
mandate.
right now to think of solar for step number one is the town dump,
Yeah.
the cap.
That's an easy one.
That's an easy one.
If they can find a way to do it
But,
without.
but a
getting
lot of properties are south-facing hills, and you can't array the panels to face the sun.
Yeah.
So let me throw one out there, and I know let's keep going on, is, and I brought this up before, that mobile property, the gas line property that we just acquired, I think is pretty much unbuildable for a very long time for different reasons, a whole bunch of different reasons. That's like 50 acres or something over there that was acquired, that could be an interesting use of that property, because we can't do anything with it.
Right.
It has the wells on the property, it's locked, it's not on 16 directly, it's back a little bit, so
Right.
It doesn't really have the wells on the property.
they're not on the property.
not on the
Because
Okay.
the pipeline runs underneath it.
Thank you for
right?
showing up.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Brian.
Thank you.
Do we have the ability to
South of them.
borrow a bunch of money and make some more red on the map?
Making red on the map is, I don't know even how to answer that, I don't know.
That's going to come down to the.
Can we just buy up
People
some
would have to
residential
want to sell
properties and
property
rezone?
for us to be able to convert property.
People would want to sell some properties.
I want to-
If,
Nobody wants to sell any property?
One of our biggest barriers to business is people will not sell their land.
I've actually heard that, by the way, so I don't know the answer, the real answer, but.
you know,
Take the fork.
It's not the right number then.
Well, before we get to that point, let's fill up what we
I was
have.
gonna say, we have red, let's use red.
Well, let's not look for more red. We're not using the red we have.
Let's start bringing businesses in, and then if we fill a pipeline up with a few businesses that say, hey, cool, we like Douglas.
Well, I think
then we
that would
can-
break the logjam. I think if people saw that, hey, the town's starting to get traffic and that property value's gonna go up. So
That's what I'm saying.
they're gonna be a lot more willing to sell it instead of getting pennies on the dollar.
And I think that all the
Bring this puppy over here.
well, one,
approvals and everything would start happening faster if they were dealing with more.
100%.
Yeah.
And there was one conversation that has come up also in the past, which is, do we have to streamline some of the business sponsorship through the processing, the permitting processes in the back end? Planning, zoning, conservation, all these things. Can we help that a little bit? And that's another potential option. So, okay, awesome. We got 15 nominees. so
Okay, all right, so.
We're doing good, though.
Any additional thoughts on some of these opportunities that you all mentioned are missing from town on prime locations for them?
Killed them.
We found a lot. We found pharmacy, grocery store, brew pub. Sorry.
For the recreational, the idea.
Oh,
that I
that's right.
said-
You had an idea,
Well,
yeah.
the idea I said I had. In Canton, there's a place called Treetop Adventures, and then
Zip lines and stuff?
Monkey Joe, there was a Monkey Joe's and
just
other ones.
opened in Berlin. Those are the only two I found around here, and one in Mystic. We probably can't deal with them, but we have stuff that's landlocked because of the state. And they're basically ropes courses, obstacle courses.
Oh, yeah.
So there's not a lot of infrastructure as far as water, kind of thing. It fits in the setting that we have in Douglas with the nature. If there was a way to work in partnership with the state, where they have so much of our land, to just get a passover into, for that type of thing, because it fits in with the recreational use of state forest and everything, you know, maybe a way to work, and it's not a high impact as far as on the natural resources that we have.
So that's a great idea. I will say we actually discussed this, Carol, when was this? Remember we had that, I had contacted, there were guys in New Hampshire, that was Monkey something, I don't remember the name, but I had contacted a place about going through that, and I actually had them come down and spoke to them. Basically, they felt like for them, because they were in New Hampshire, it was a little far out of the way. There are now places closer, which is interesting. The angle we didn't take last time was actually working with the state on it, because we felt like that would be hard. But to your point, that actually might be an angle that we might want to go and attack. It's a great idea, by the way.
Those are the names of the streets.
Oh, awesome. She came prepared. Landlocked property.
Yeah, 'cause you can go up here
Well, no, she's
to-
saying to use even some of this.
Trail that goes up
Agree,
to
some
that
of the state property.
Where's the landlocked property that you need access?
Well, I think the rural, we can probably stuff back
I
here.
thought they
Zone this
took,
RC2.
is it, where's 16?
16's right, Douglas Brook.
Yeah, I thought they took all of the frontage, and so to get back,
The industrial area back here.
yeah, to get back in one of those.
So you need the easement from somewhere.
But I think we had a problem with the owner of that might not be willing to even.
Maybe they would for something like this, though, if they like the natural.
Fair enough. So what I'll do for you, actually, I'll move this back here.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I mean, I don't know where the best, but I thought that might be one thing.
What's the difference between?
Make Douglas a little more attractive,
And make the
adventures.
state, they're not giving us the pilot money, maybe they can give us something.
So, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay. All right, so this was a highly ambitious agenda that we have not managed to work through everything on, which is great because you guys have had so much feedback. I did, I really did. I've almost, this is, I want to explain. So I would
We
propose.
did the second topic already, right?
We did the second topic. I would propose that we just do one final exercise to close this portion of
I would say
the plan up.
We asked people
Yep.
to vision.
Yep, so I'd like you
And I'm gonna move this.
to humor me and describe the ideal future of Douglas. Start with a statement, in 20 years, Douglas will be. So the idea is to get you, in Douglas, could, 20 years, Douglas will be blah, 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 right?
20 years, Douglas will be fun.
Fun?
And no opinion is wrong here.
In an ideal world, don't think about zoning or money, what will Douglas be?
Safe,
Or wetlands? Fun, safe,
More developed?
convenient.
A bedroom town.
Friendly.
Educated.
Just stay on Facebook.
Desirable, maybe?
we can't offer you.
Desirable.
Nice, okay.
It's desirable already.
Regain its regional power while retaining its natural beauty.
Not under the control of the state finance.
Independent.
Independent of state
Oh
finance.
boy, you have to slow down. While retaining its natural beauty.
100 years ago, we were in this industrial powerhouse. 100 years ago, industrial powerhouse.
Good regional.
State funding,
Funding?
financing, whatever you want.
Independent of state funding. And then you said something else.
That was it.
No, that was it? Somebody said another one.
He said industrial powerhouse, but do we want to go back to be another mill?
No,
That's why I
not,
said- That's why I just said, like,
Not the-
regain regional power, because you're right, it was mostly trees.
you know, you look
And-
at that BJ's Distribution Center right across the line
Uxbridge?
in Uxbridge. Put that in our Industry Park over there. That's what we're looking
In
for.
20 years, Douglas will have the largest Amazon warehouse in the sky, in the sky, floating in the clouds.
Floating above us.
So we need to figure out our air zoning.
Well, yeah, that's a different discussion. We can't figure out the land, let's start with that. Does that help? You want more?
I want a little more.
Will be a
What do
place
you wanna
that
spend your
will
yeah.
be a place that families want to spend time.
Self-supporting.
And you would be willing to retire?
So we want families and retirement all.
I want to be able to walk downtown, get something to eat, go to a show, then maybe a comedy club after that, and then go home and have my house still safe.
You get all that?
I got almost all of it. I missed something from over here, though. I'll have to watch the video.
Oh, just someplace you'd be willing to retire?
Willing to retire, got it.
Still want more?
I also want pod clubs.
Hot clubs?
What do you want?
Pod clubs.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, you know, it's a want.
My vote counts.
It's revenue.
It's legal, it's, yeah, state proved it.
Okay, so I think, given that we had to abbreviate the agenda, I think that is everything that I need to get out of tonight. Are there any?
I was gonna say, I would like to maybe, are there any other comments that people do want to throw out?
I mean, it's not really revenue generating, it doesn't really help the town, but we do have a lot of equestrian farms in town. I wish we did more centralized with that.
That's a good,
Tie them together?
Tie
plus
together and somehow make that into something as an attraction to town to get people to come to Douglas.
to become the equestrian capital of
Something.
Massachusetts.
I like it.
Ranch.
Dude ranch.
Then we got the lodge.
I work over
So the SNET, the Southern New England Trunk Line Trail, a lot of people trailer their horses here on weekends and ride up and down that.
Not only weekends, today it was packed.
So
Going down to the causeway. You couldn't get a trailer in there.
Okay.
Oh, that one over there where they go
It's
down?
something that brings
Yeah,
people to
By us?
the
town.
top of the causeway.
Yeah.
We've got lots of equestrian properties in town, so if there was a way to get all those together, that'd be great.
Okay, good. So become an equestrian town.
We're kind
We
of.
already are.
No,
I think we're there.
We're 20.
Have you seen some of the horse farms in this
Oh,
town?
They're
my
big.
daughter rides, so yeah.
Yeah, they're humongous,
Yeah.
but they all operate independently.
Love it.
What else?
Can't stop now. Open discussion now, so open comments. Open comments.
I'd like to see an artist development like AS 220 in Providence that
What is-
has like the makerspace and places for artists to rent out for a photography studio or things like that to put
By the way,
on.
that's what the grammar school would be really good at. It's just little
Yeah.
small spaces that people. can
Band
use.
rehearsal
That's
spots.
actually an interesting one for that.
Mm-hmm.
Go on. While you're letting her write.
I'm
after she's
waiting
done.
for her to get done writing.
Let's keep going. I'll watch the
Get
video.
our schools back to the quality they were when we built all these damn things. Right now, there are so many, was it choice? What do they call it?
School
School
choice.
choice?
School choice.
People leaving, going to Blackstone Valley. Other schools because they don't consider our schools quality anymore. Brand-new
But
buildings.
that doesn't mean that it's changing the perception. These schools and what's going on in them is not bad.
Right.
Right.
Perception is reality.
Well, I went to school
Why-
there and I wouldn't consider
Why
it
are
good.
people leaving then?
Some was the money issues over the last couple of years. And
That's
not-
costing us.
And the not knowing, when going to the other schools, not knowing if the programs that we currently have will remain.
Sports and.
So, and
all.
we actually, fewer went this year to BBT, and that actually is all being worked on and trying to get some, in conjunction with like the farm, trying to get some vocational programs into the school.
So Prop 2.5 should have changed some of that override.
Prop 2.5 was.
Well, that's more money coming in to support these programs you're talking
You mean the
about.
override.
That would have kept.
You
Yeah.
mean the
Yeah,
override.
he meant the override.
The
Funded
override.
school and kept
No,
everything stable.
that is helping.
Yeah.
We actually have a robotics class for the first time now, which is hopefully gonna bring some more in. There's a robotics.
More STEM-oriented
space
things.
in the school, so there is.
So that is one of my visions, to see our schools back to where they were 10 years ago.
Right, but I'm saying it's perception. The schools themselves are doing a good job at what they're doing.
No, we're not
So
saying
it's
that, but
changing
it's,
the perception.
like 10 years ago, we had more kids choicing into Douglas.
Exactly, and that's
Now
what
we have
I'm,
more choicing out.
Right.
yeah.
And now it's a drain. Instead of us.
And we got income off.
But were we ever
versus
highly
spending.
esteemed for our school system in Douglas? Like, was anybody ever like, yeah, Douglas schools, great?
Oh, you went there, right?
Actually, yes.
I went there, yeah, and
10
no,
years
I was
ago?
not like that.
That was my grandchildren were thinking coming out of Webster to come to Douglas.
Yep.
And living with us, so they could be a
Oh, Webster
resident.
wanted to send a bus to us back when I was.
Okay.
So any other thoughts? In 20 years, Douglas will be.
I go back to what somebody mentioned earlier about utilizing the state forest as a draw somehow, but if there's no, I don't know how, now that we've been talking, looking at the map, if there's no adjacent, if you had adjacent land that was developable to utilize, like somebody mentioned an REI, or because if you can say we have the largest state forest in the state, which I don't know that it is, I know that it's getting up there if you include all these more recent acquisitions, that it potentially could be.
There was
but I
actually a
don't know.
conversation about a treetops course that actually would tie into that also and stuff. Yep.
Right, but I mean, because we actually have something free that people can utilize. I don't see how you could take advantage of it unless you had parking next to it, if you had businesses next to it, like how can you capitalize on that state forest?
So in 20 years, we will have capitalized on the state forest.
Okay, there you go.
That's the statement I
state
think.
forest work for us.
Make the
Or-
state and the state.
Or buy it back.
Or pay us.
We'll never buy it
I
back.
was gonna say, I don't think we can buy it back, but
Why
you're.
can't we? I mean, why can't we buy pieces of it? Like, isn't it
They
just a
wouldn't
matter
sell
of approaching the state and saying, this is a problem for our town, we're in the state?
How do they take
No, because they
it?
keep taking more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not gonna get,
How
they're
do
not
they
selling
They
it
won't
back.
sell it.
Right, but how do they keep taking it?
Because it was,
But they don't have to.
If they don't have to pay,
Compensate us?
if they can just decide on how much they want to pay, how, like, what office is that? Like, how can that be petitioned to say, like,
So
well, under.
We need to talk to our-
I got an action item on this. So I think what you're asking, and I think a lot of us are probably in the same boat, is we don't understand the process that surrounds state taking property for state, for the state forest, and are there
How they determine
potentials,
private-
how they determine.
And the
No,
lack
by the way,
of-
I don't understand it. I don't think most of us
They-
understand how.
Well, they don't take it, they pay for it, they buy it.
But we allow them to buy it.
Well, I don't
Right,
think
I
we have too much
understand how they-
control.
And that's the, so this is
They
the
can buy it.
understanding that we're kind of
They
lacking.
can buy it just like anybody can buy it. But what I don't understand is that the town levies taxes based on its needs.
Right,
And they have jurisdiction over the property owners, unless it's the state. That's the part that I don't understand. They can levy, the town can levy taxes, but they don't get to levy taxes on the big giant green thing.
Well, that's the pilot.
exactly.
How does the liability work?
and
If
the state
someone,
decides what they.
Right, so why did we lose the authority to levy taxes on that?
right,
Because we're little.
It's a town, it's the state law, that's
David
the
and
problem.
Goliath, yeah. If we fit under a program, I think that's the pilot program at that point,
David and
where it's a
Goliath.
formula that dictates what people like us or Quabbin or the other places get for their things, and that's out of our control, unfortunately.
state
But
tells
you
but they
to
set
do
up that law when they were smaller parcels, you know, so is there a way that the law can be changed?
Well, the problem is the pilot system, right? So it's payment in lieu of taxes is what pilot stands for.
Right.
So instead of us levying a tax burden against that land, they're supposed to pay us. Unfortunately, your rate of pay
not
they're
meeting
giving
the
us has not met
Right.
the consumption of the land,
Right,
and it's actually falling,
And they have a pot of money in their budget for pilot.
and they don't fund it.
And, right, but places that that they're doing pilot programs to that have more voters
Right.
with
Yeah, there
more
are some
clout
places that
to
have maintained their
the
funding.
senators and congressmen are gonna get a higher percentage of.
So who's our guy? Is it Fatman?
It's Fatman, that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, Fatman is the guy you need to approach, because that's coming from the State
And I
House.
do know that from, not directly, but I know Ryan has brought this up a few times to the state. I don't know where it's gone. That might be a better price
Well,
selectman
again,
or.
because we're just small. We're
or-
not many people. And so there's other senators that, you know, have a lot more of a larger consistency.
Unless we want to take all 8,000 people from the town driving in
In
buses.
20
up
years,
to
I'd like to see
the
more diversity
Capitol.
in town.
Oh,
More
But
diversity.
although we're small, I mean, that's the whole point that Fatman would need to point out, is that it doesn't make a big difference for other towns that don't have a third of their land.
So we'll make that note that I think we have to poke on the pilot program again and figure out, you know, see where things are at with Ryan and the pilot discussion.
That should literally be someone's job in town. Is the
Like
program.
I think the town manager
I was gonna
is
say,
working on that.
I know
Has
Max and others are talking about
But
that.
that should be, I mean, that's been ongoing for years.
been. There's just only so much you can do. And every town that has this stuff in is fighting the same battle. It's not just
Right, but
us.
as-
We're not
as
the
she's
only
saying,
ones.
Some towns have been faring much better.
Yeah, not much better, I don't
But so
think.
then, the environmental police, are they, who's in charge of the state forest? If someone like, the trails aren't maintained, someone twists their ankle or breaks their leg,
The state.
It's DCR.
it's DCR, but it's our services they call on first, right?
Right.
Mainly for the lake, I don't know about for the entire state
Oh, yeah.
forest,
No,
is it?
When people get lost in the state forest, we gotta go find them.
Right. When there's a
See,
fire or
so
anything, it's us.
I want to understand the liability and the responsibility and who reimburses us for that.
Nobody.
So let's-
Seems like
okay,
a
let's-
whole separate conversation.
Well, I was gonna say, let's move past this one. I think we got it. We know this is a problem and we gotta deal with it.
The police chief was in and he said that it wasn't a huge significant number.
Impact
Yeah.
on them. It is now 8:29. So, does anybody else have some final thing they want to bring up today?
Can we go over the action items and make sure that
There's
we've
only one I had
captured?
documented. How much open land is near the dump? That was the big red area that I want to figure out basically what's available there.
We did a lot of talking, so I think we need more than one action item from all that.
I'm not disagreeing. I just only captured one on the board.
Yeah, so I got how much land is available by the red parcel by the dump, and we need to spend
North
some more
Street, Gilboa.
time
Yeah.
learning how the process that surrounds the pilot program works.
Right, and then North Street and Gilboa, who owns the house?
Who owns
What-
the house?
And what constraints do we have?
We're
Yeah.
gonna look into
There.
the wetlands bylaw and see if it's,
Yeah, that came out of the last meeting, but I'm not
Clarify the
gonna document
wetlands.
it because that was the last meeting.
I'd like to see more land zoned. If you don't want to go all the way to zone it industrial or commercial, at least rural, commercial, residential commercial.
RC.
More of that yellow, the RC.
I'd like to see more RC zones,
So that's a common non-action item.
okay?
Which is fine, by the way.
What's an RC?
You can do both resident and commercial in a zone.
That's
I
a
mean, I think it's out of your
two-year.
last
I
meeting
live in
too,
one.
Brad, but the farm, the Gilboa Street, North Street,
North Street, Gilboa, yep. I'm
right, but
gonna
also
make-
the mixed-use dwellings and
Right.
limits on what we can do.
How would mixed-use dwelling work in town? I think that was
Right.
probably to
Right.
validate that.
Zoning.
That's actually a good one.
Mixed use and height of building. How many
Right.
floors can you put
Yeah,
in?
like
5
five.
floors,
Right,
6
right,
floors?
Right.
And I think that's due to our fire chief, the ladder truck,
Yeah.
what he can reach.
I'm
probably
sure
is.
What he
It
can
is.
reach.
we can
Yes.
easily fund a new fire truck.
Right. No,
Really?
because when we did the industrial, we can go 60 feet on industrial buildings, and he said he had no problem with that.
But would that translate to residential too?
I would think so.
You would
Because
think so.
they've got to get into Hayward Landing.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually
That's
very
4
true.
stories, right?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah,
are
that's-
tall
those are-
stories.
Yeah.
Those are 10.
So we got, how much
foot
open land is
ceilings.
there? North Street, Gilboa, kind of general topic that we gotta follow up with. Pilot issues. How would mixed use work in town? How tall can a building be?
How many stories?
Stories, tall. Yeah, I'm with you.
We know how tall they can be now. We need to let them be taller.
What would be the maximum?
35 feet right now, I think, is the max you can do with the residential.
Let's figure out, yeah, so let's figure that out and then we'll come back.
what's the structural integrity of the elementary school? That's something I'll need to find out.
Oh, we know that.
You know that? Is
That's
it?
part of the RFP that we have. That's
Okay, great.
never went through
Structurally
anywhere.
good, just full of asbestos.
Just needs a,
Because it actually had a newer roof on it.
Yeah.
it has a new
but,
roof?
Yeah.
Newer.
Newer.
Newer, that's probably 20 years old now.
Yeah.
No, it's not 20 years old at all. It's newer than that.
Wow,
It's
that's
not,
sad.
Mitch said it was like, what?
I'd say 15.
Yeah, it was like
15.
early 2000s.
Yeah.
How many
we did it
responses did you
after we
receive to your
passed the new high
RFP?
school.
Yeah.
Because
Zero.
we took the guano out.
Took all the
and put the
guano
roof on.
Wow.
We had
Not that
a
far.
section on the agenda for synthesization.
Yeah, we're not gonna do all that. That's basically what we're doing right now, by the way.
Okay.
Okay.
The roof lasts long.
So I think that we've done a ton today. I would say thank you guys. I guess I will open myself up for feedback. Was this session valuable to you folks? Yay?
Well, you know, in 20 years.
You're not helping me.
I'll let you
In
know.
20 years, we'll tell you if.
If any of those statements were true, we'll be good. Okay. Thank you guys for your time tonight. I know it's a personal time to come out and do this. By the way, take donuts, please. The cops get the rest of them, but you guys have to take whatever. Someone else also.
Wheeled in.
Thank you guys very much though for tonight. And by the way, it's an official meeting, so somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.